All right, we've got tons of Thanksgiving football action to break down. Packers, 49ers, Cowboys victorious Thursday, and we're making picks for a bunch of Week 12 games as well. Maybe a South Division potentially decided in Week 12. All that and more coming up right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big ups to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, Thursday. I'm back. I'm having a road game here. I'm back home, in-laws in California, and having a good old time. Multiple plates of food yesterday. About to have a whole bunch of leftovers today on this Friday morning after the podcast. And it's a message to the Detroit Lions that I appreciate because, my childhood and, coming back home, all this nostalgic feelings, and then seeing the Lions lose on Thursday just made me feel like, okay, yeah, I'm back home.
Everything's right in the world.
This is what it used to be like, right?
Yeah.
The Lions are bad, and I'm home with family and eating way too much food. So I love it. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Hope they all are having a good weekend, including you, Matt.
Yes.
Get enough plates of food?
Yeah, absolutely. And along those lines, I had pumpkin pie for breakfast. As soon as we're done, as soon as we hang up here, I'm going to eat a bunch of stuffing and leftovers right before the Black Friday game. How crazy is that? Yeah. So I've been doing this a very long time, and I am thankful for that. I mean, without question. But there's an old way of looking at the league that it really starts to take shape at Thanksgiving, and there's a lot more football ahead. I mean, I think of a team like the Bills, like they have a brutal schedule, but maybe from Thanksgiving on, they put it all together and they just steamroll the league and win the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? And I thought Detroit could be that type of team, and Green Bay's starting to put things together. And last little note here, I found it interesting that yesterday, Thanksgiving Day, the Packers go to 5-6. The Seahawks go to 6-5, and Seattle's got an awful next 3 games here and they're on a 2-game losing streak. Could the NFC wildcard picture be changing drastically here before our eyes?
Yeah, it's amazing because and really you can't expect it to be too much different for a first-year starting quarterback, although Love's been in the league for a while now, and it's been such an up and down season for Love. And and the first topic I have here is that Love is trending up, and it's been a couple of weeks now that he's been playing some really good football. He started out playing some pretty good football with young receivers, and you're thinking, oh man, maybe this is going to be good for the Packers. Fresh blood on offense, total new look, and then they hit a real downslope, and a pretty hard downslope for a few weeks there, and now they're back on the upturn. So you got to be excited about what you're seeing here from the Packers and specifically their quarterback in Jordan Love the last few weeks, and short week on the road, hostile environment to the Detroit Lions, who are leading the division, and the Packers say 5-6, not so fast. And nobody's mathematically eliminated yet. I don't think, Matt. Maybe the Panthers are, but there's a lot that could still happen. To your point there about things get real serious here starting at about Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. Now you get a nice long break. You're trending the right direction. You're building confidence on a young team. And I'm going to talk about the Lions a little, but really, I said this on Friday, the Lions defense has slipped dramatically lately too. That seems like an underreported story. And that showed up in this game. But Christian Watson, Jalen Reed, I mean, these are talented players that are starting to kind of click with the league and their quarterback. And Green Bay came to Pittsburgh 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I previewed them to, advanced scouted them like crazy. And I'm like, man, Love's worse than I thought. He's just not accurate enough. It's Aaron Jones and then a bunch of questions. That has just totally spun around, starting with that Steeler game. He was really good in that game. So that's like 3 in a row that he's putting the ball on the money and playing well.
And even when he did it, he kind of came up short to a big play with Christian
Mhm.
Watson, but Watson went up and got the football and helped his quarterback out. And you're going to need some help from your receivers at times. He's not always going to be perfect, but it's a good point about the Lions defense.
Yeah.
The Packers come to town, put up 20 in the first quarter. And now you're just in catch-up mode the rest of the game. And they weren't catching up. And we have to start talking about Jared Goff's turnovers. It was the interceptions last week, is the fumbles this week. And is Jared Goff kind of trending in the opposite direction of what Jordan Love is doing right now? Is Goff that quarterback that's going to take you deep into playoffs and win really tough football games, win primetime football games, win playoff football games when the whole country is watching? And Jared Goff was putting up numbers this season. And then all of a sudden he hit a couple of game stretch where it's like, come on, Goff, these are close games. They squeaked by last week, but you can't turn the ball over this much in the NFL and expect to win a ton of games.
Yeah, I've been hard on Goff, and I've always called him the ultimate fair weather quarterback. And what I mean by that is he plays better in good weather than bad, but that's not what I mean. I mean his road home splits are always very drastically different. Big games. When I mean fair weather, I mean when it's stormy out and you have to beat the Packers on prime time, is he your guy? I was starting to come around that, boy, he's playing the best of his career. And I still think that's true. This might just be a blip, but I hope deep down he's not a fair weather quarterback.
And he brought him back both weeks, but digging the holes in the turnovers, you can't do it. And his line looks actually really good from a passing perspective. Is 29 and 44 passing, 332 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 103.6 rating. The QBR disagrees, 15.2 QBR. So that's kind of where you see those things diverge a little bit. But the fumbles in this one and the pressure, that's another part of fair weather, right? Is dealing with pressure. And the Packers were able to get pressure, and I think that's one of the things that's helped Goff tremendously is that the Lions have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. But in this one, the Packers were able to get home, Gary, with 3 sacks of his own. Actually, the only 3 sacks were all Rashawn Gary.
It was, and their pressure was constant. I didn't see that coming. I know it's a talented Packer D, but again, going back to me digging into them so heavily a couple weeks ago, I stressed on the local radio here all the time. I'm like, since I think 2012, every first-round pick has been on defense except for Jordan Love. This defense should be awesome, and it's underachieved every step of the way, but they have some good players, and it was a very good performance led by Gary, he's not Micah Parsons, who I'm sure we'll talk about here in a minute, but he's not that far off of that tier.
And then the other side of it is if you're the Lions, the way you're built with the offensive line, you want to run the ball, and you can't do that. You get out of your game plan immediately when a team goes up multiple scores in the first quarter, and then it's all on Goff. And they kind of righted the ship in the second half, but it was just too little, too late there for the Lions. So the defense and the complementary way that you play football there, you got to be able to run the ball. You got to be able to be bullies if you're the Lions, and you can't give up all those points early. So they got to get that fixed.
Yeah, so I think the playoffs are a very real possibility for Green Bay.
Not much to take away from the Commanders Cowboys, Matt. It was a blowout.
I have 2 little things.
Okay. 45-10 blowout. Everything kind of worked for Dallas and not much really worked for Washington in this one.
Yeah. And I just think it's noteworthy. We should mention it this morning. They let go of Jack Del Rio, the defensive coordinator in Washington, as well as a handful of other assistants. We had mentioned during the week that could they bump the enemy up? I mean, they're just obvious changes on the horizon here. Maybe that includes Hal, who knows? People need to remember that this new owner in Washington, I'm not NBA, I don't know anything about the NBA, but he also owns the Sixers, and nobody tanked like the Sixers. So maybe that's the plan here going forward.
Trust the process.
Trust the process. Yeah, you told me about that. Yeah. And the other note is Dallas is really good, and I think Dak has firmly thrown his hat in the ring for MVP conversation too.
Yeah, he's playing at that level. Absolutely. And just they kept the foot on the gas as well in the fourth quarter of that game, which I kind of liked. And part of that is Deron Bland. We were asked the question earlier this week about him being a Pro Bowler. People are talking about him.
He takes another one to the house.
People are talking about him as Defensive Player of the Year. What he's doing right now is crazy. And how about the return, too? It wasn't just like, easy pick 6, walk into the end zone. He had to make a play as a ball carrier after the tremendous instincts he's showing and anticipation and making those plays on the defensive side of the ball. So huge story, Deron Bland. Great story for the Dallas Cowboys this year.
I think he has as many touchdowns this year as my boy Kenny Pickett. Like, how sad is that?
CeeDee Lamb's the only player on the Cowboys that has more touchdowns than him.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty big number, but I've ignored this Bland story as much as possible. I'm like, he was a nice mid-round pick. I got to dig into him heavier now and be more knowledgeable about this player because what he's doing is unbelievable.
I did see something from, I believe it was Brugler or Zerline, one of the draft analysts, talking about how most people had kind of an undrafted grade. He was just really under the radar, and the Cowboys loved him and took him in the 5th round. And he has athleticism, he has size, he displayed ability in college. He was just kind of a player that fell through the cracks for some reason.
It happens, yeah. Now, Dallas has quietly drafted very well in the last 5-ish years.
They have. I've been saying that. Like, it's usually when you have super meddling ownership, weird stuff happens. But back in the day, Al Davis was great at it, and then he kind of lost his mojo. The Jones family has been great at drafting. They have very good. And that's why they have the team that they have right now.
100%. They deserve some credit.
Real quick, Del Rio, it's interesting because obviously Washington's been one of the worst defenses in the league going on, at least a month now, and if not longer. Just everybody's feasting on their defense. But they traded away 2 of their best players on the defensive side of the ball. Right. But Del Rio, I don't think liked one of those players either. So it's like, well, you need talent though, Del Rio. I don't know. So yeah, it's just a bad situation there, and I
wholesale change is coming though.
Yeah, the writing's on the wall there. It's a new regime. It's going to be a long-term rebuild for the Washington Commanders. So you're playing for your jobs right now.
Start your fantasy players against the Commanders as you have been.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, next we got 49ers beating the Seahawks, taking a commanding lead in the NFC West, and more Week 12 picks for the rest of Sunday and Monday's action as well for Week 12 next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. As the weather gets a little colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins that initial money line bet. It's just a $5 bet. Turn it into $150 more to play with on FanDuel. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is super easy to use, wide range of betting options for that extra 150 bonus bets like spreads, player props, over-unders. I love the parlays. Build your own parlays at FanDuel, not just NFL football either. Tons of sports to bet on. Anything you can imagine, you can find it and get in on the action at FanDuel, and tons of season-long bets too, which are always a lot of fun. MVP races and Super Bowl division winners, who's the next coach to be fired. All those odds you can find at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon right now for a chance at 150 in bonus bets. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So the San Francisco 49ers really have dominated not only the Seattle Seahawks of recent, but the entire West. This is 10 straight against the West for the San Francisco 49ers right now. They beat the Seahawks 3 times last year, including clinched it against the Seahawks, clinched the division, then beat them again in the playoffs, and then they go to their house short week on a Thursday and are eating turkey on their field after a pretty thorough win. It got a little close after an oddball pick 6 from Brock Purdy to start the third quarter, but really the Seahawks were never in this game and only mustered a couple of field goals against that San Francisco 49ers defense. 31-13 the final. 49ers improved to 8-3. Now back at the 2 seed in the NFC, by the way, with the Lions loss, with the Philadelphia Eagles coming up next week for the Niners.
Oh, wow.
And more on the Eagles momentarily. And those Seattle Seahawks now, as you mentioned, 6-5, and they're going to have to fight their way and make sure they earn one of those playoff spots. I think they will get it. They're just, when the Niners are right now, they're the best team in the league and they're blowing people out.
Without a doubt. And you mentioned the pick 6, and I didn't even stop a beat. I'm like, that's nice. They're still doomed. Right.
It was like, well, if there's one thing that could get a team back in, it's that. It's like, here's a free touchdown, guys, since you can't score one on your own. And now you're within, a quick couple scores, but it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. And they're in trouble. They've lost 3 of their last 4, 2 in a row at Dallas, at San Fran versus the Eagles are their next 3. Yikes. I don't have much more to add. I think the Niners are the best team in the league. Even before this game, they were number 1 in my power ranks, with all respect to the Eagles, et cetera. I just don't see weaknesses on this team. I just see speed, and that 4-man pass rush now with Chase Young is lethal. The corners are playing well. There's so many weapons. McCaffrey's a superstar. Purdy's playing great. So they're really, really good.
Yeah, and even with the weird stuff from Purdy, and then he just throws a dime in between 4 defenders to Brandon Ayuk for the dagger touchdown in the fourth quarter of that game after the pick 6. And so, they're just flying high, playing great defense. Awesome matchup. A couple of seasons in a row now that the 49ers, and they don't do this. They play a left cornerback, right cornerback situation, and Charvarius Ward's always lined up on the left side every week, except for when they play the Seahawks, and they let him travel and play DK Metcalf, who has been a problem for the 49ers in the past, and a big athletic corner to go against the big fast DK Metcalf, and Charvarius Ward on 7 targets allowed 1 catch for 14 yards in that coverage, traveling with DK Metcalf. So that was our player of the game on Locked On 49ers was Charvarius Ward. Doesn't get talked a lot about on this team because there's so many stars, but he was awesome on Thursday.
So is that kind of turning into a Lattimore, Mike Evans situation in the division?
Yeah. It is. You know what I noticed, though, is DK Metcalf seemed a little more defeated and frustrated in this game because usually he's really up for these matchups. And I think part of it is, he's a little bit chip on his shoulders. The Niners drafted Debo over him in the second round of that 2019 draft. As a lot of wide receivers tend to be, they start keeping track of all the wide receivers that were drafted before them in every draft. Wide receivers is just built in that way. And Metcalf does this with a lot of teams and ends up fighting with guys and wants to bully you and block you and everything. And usually it's a fist fight against the 49ers. He seemed kind of defeated in this one. Like he kind of knew what was going to happen. Not so much getting, locked up, but it was just like, it's kind of dropping some balls and, some bad throws and maybe some plays he could have made if the ball was placed in a better spot. His fight, it's usually like he is so ornery, and he wasn't quite that way in this one. So I think the 49ers had the Seahawks beat in a lot of ways, and I think that goes back to how often and how easily they've been beating them for multiple seasons now.
Yeah, it shows. I mean, they're a deflating team to play against, and as you know, every team the week after they played the Niners last year lost. I mean, it just takes a lot out of you.
The only team last year that didn't lose after they played the Niners was the Chiefs because they had a bye week.
Yeah, right. So they just take a lot out of you.
Yeah, they do. They're a good team. They're well-rounded. Purdy doesn't have to play perfect like he did last week, and they can beat you on the ground. This was a McCaffrey and Debo game. Last week it was an Ayuk game. The week before that, it was a George Kittle game. They're so hard to play against right now. So, and next week is going to be a lot of fun. Eagles, 49ers. And if the 49ers want that 1 seed, they have to have this one. And they're going to be a playoff team either way. And, a couple game lead in the West. I'd be shocked if they don't win that division. In the NFC West.
That looks close to wrapped up.
Next, let's talk about those. Let's get to it right now. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles at 9-1, and kind of a teaser for next week when we start previewing games. The Eagles are the opposite in the 49ers, where the 49ers are the best front runners in the league. And when they win, they blow people out. The Eagles have won. The Eagles have been almost tied in every game. And in the second half, they're like, well, we're better than you. We're not going to run away from you. We're just going to kind of walk away from you and beat you. And it's becoming clear to me, Matt, that it's more of a feature than a bug for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I talked about this on local radio recently. Like, it's not like the Eagles at the beginning of the season was like, oh man, it's a little weird. They're not really beating teams soundly, but they're still winning games. Are they not figuring it out? It's almost like, no, Bill Belichick kind of did this for 20 years. Like, no, we're just going to win slowly against you. And I think it's kind of just the way they are rather than being, maybe they're not firing in all cylinders. I think this is a team that's just built to win those close games and pull off 4th and 1s. And the Bills are kind of the opposite as well. So this is an interesting matchup as the 6-5 Buffalo Bills, who really need to win every single game that they can here in the AFC, going at the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. The 9-1 Eagles, the Eagles at home favored by 3.
Yeah, I'm with you on your assessment of the Eagles. They're body punchers. They just every round's a little more difficult against the Eagles, and good on both lines of scrimmage. And hey, if you're going to play single high, we're going to throw the ball to Brown and Smith. If you're going to play with a light box, we're just going to hand it off time and time again. And if we happen to get in 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, we're going to convert. I mean, like that wears on you too. And then that pass rush takes over. So I'm going to take the points. Last I saw, this game was 3.
Yes.
I don't know who wins it, and this is a real gut pick by me because I mentioned the Bills to start the show. I almost had them buried a week or two ago, just mathematically, with all their tiebreakers are terrible in the division, and they've lost all their games or losses in the AFC. But I think they're better than I think they're ready to hit their stride and be a top 5 type of team. So I think they keep this close.
I love this game, and
Yeah.
I think it's going to potentially be a high scoring type of a game. So the Eagles are going to have to score, I think, in this one, and they should be able to. But it's going to be fun to see if they do have to open it up and air it out a little bit more to see what that looks like with Jalen Hurts, because I do think that Buffalo and Josh Allen, despite some of the finger pointing that's been going on towards Josh Allen and some of his bad turnovers he's had this year, he's actually played really well too.
Exceptionally well. Like as well as any quarterback in the league.
Yeah. Right. And that Eagles secondary is, it's good, but it's not great. And I think they might be able to have some success. And the over-under is actually pretty high, 48.5 now that I look at it here for this football game. So, the bettors think, the odds makers think it's going to be a pretty high scoring one as well. And that doesn't bode as well. The Eagles want an ugly 13-12 halftime score. And then, and so we'll see which type of a game it turns out to be. And I think watching the first half will tell us what's going to be happening in the second half of this game. If it is more of a shootout, I do like Buffalo. If it's close and ugly, then I love the Philadelphia Eagles in this one. I do think the Eagles are just better. I think three points is perfect. I'm going to go Eagles at home just because they are at home, and I haven't seen them lose enough to be able to think that they're gonna fall in this game, and they're more complete than the Buffalo Bills are. But it's going to be a fun game on Sunday for sure.
My last nugget is this is so far from analytical or logical. It's just a gut thing. I just feel like the Eagles are ready to lose a game. Are they really going to be 16-1? Are they really going to be 12-1? Like it seems like a 14-3 team. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. And on the flip side, the Bills too, it's like, okay, well, they played good last week, so they played bad this week, right? Isn't that what happens? So this is like a Josh Allen 3 interception game too. So like I
can't wait for this one. You're right.
Yeah, Bills are on the downslope of the roller coaster because they played good the last time, and that's just the way that team has been. So yeah, it'll be a super interesting one in Philly on Sunday. All right, we're gonna make some more picks, including Saints and Falcons, and some more playoff implications there in Week 12 next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app and get a little special offer for our listeners here with Gametime. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed, and you should never have to worry about buying tickets to your next big event. And Gametime takes care of all of that. Last-minute killer deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets so you feel good and just be excited about your event and not have to worry about the ticketing process, which can be a pain sometimes. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for not just NFL football, all of the sporting events that you want to go to near you. Music, comedy, theater events, anything. You see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what you're going to get when you arrive. I love the all-in prices. Show your total up front, so you know what you're getting, and you know you're getting that great deal without the hidden fees, which is the worst part of buying tickets for any big-time event. Just a couple of taps on Gametime. You buy your tickets, find the great deal, and it's all right there on the app. You don't have to fish through your email when you get to your event with your tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here we go. I don't think we're going to get to every team here making picks in every game for this Week 12, but there's some really important ones. Let's go to the Southern divisions for some big time matchups, and look out, Matt, for the Houston Texans at 6-4 at home, hosting the 7-3 Jacksonville Jaguars. If the Texans win this football game, there will be a win-loss tie for the top of that division between the Jags and the Texans. Jacksonville on the road favored by 1.5.
This should be fun too. And telling, I mean, I don't know if I can even call Lawrence a good young quarterback anymore. Is he still young? I mean, or is he past that point? Whatever.
Yeah,
but
he feels veteran. He feels veteran-y now,
especially for this division. With Richardson and Levis and Stroud. He's the old man. But can you act like it? Can you go into a hostile environment? I expect this to be a tough place to play and beat an upstart team. Can you be Big Brother and really make him hit himself as you put your knees on his shoulders? And, I don't know that Jacksonville can. I'll take the home team here, especially plus the points.
I like me a home dog, and I like me
Yeah.
some points. I do think Jacksonville's better, and this should be like a little bit more of a pick 'em with an extra 3 points at home for the Texans. So I do like taking the points at home for Houston. And yeah, you're right. The Jaguars are supposed to be the big brother in this division for a while, and all of a sudden the Texans show up and say, "No, we're going to go ahead and be here right now." So we'll see if the Texans are ready for that, ready to compete in year one of this new regime with C.J. Stroud, and by the way, who has better numbers than Trevor Lawrence does this year. Pretty amazing what the Texans are doing. The Jaguars should win this game. They're a better team, but not by that much with the way the Texans are playing. So super fun game, and this is the biggest game so far this year to decide this division. And the Texans are at home, and if you're gonna want to win the division, you got to be able to win a big home game like this if you're Houston. So sort of a big time barometer for where those Houston Texans are right now, who have exceeded everybody's expectations.
Yeah, and again, they're pretty much playing with house money. There's no expectations, but I'd love to see them at least battle this thing to the end in a very fair fight.
And then let's go to the NFC South, where we got the 5-5 Saints that are on the road at the 4-6 Falcons. It's odd to be talking about how important a game is for potentially winning the division for a 4-6 football team right now, but that's the story for the Falcons. And this is another road team favored by 1.5. New Orleans favored by 1.5 on the road at Atlanta.
Again, I'll take the home dog here. I think these teams are pretty equal. They're both should be fresh, coming off buys. I think we're going to get Carr. I know we're going to get Ritter. I just have a hunch Bijan's going to be featured a lot more going forward after what we saw last week, and I think that's good for Atlanta. I don't know that we mentioned the Grady Jarrett injury, but that's hurt Atlanta more than people think. I think the Saints are the more physical team, but I like the home dog here.
I like New Orleans.
Yeah.
I just don't like what's going on at quarterback with the Falcons, and they don't like what's going on. If your own team doesn't like it, then how can someone else like what's going on in your house? If it's clear that you don't like what's happening at quarterback for you. I'm going to give up the 1.5 actually with this one on the road with the Saints. I just think they're top to bottom a better football team than the Falcons, and I do think this could be a lower scoring game, which would help taking the points in a home dog scenario, and in a potentially ugly game and in a familiar division sort of a matchup. But I just think the Saints are flat out better. So I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I hear you. I had a tough one picking that one. I would not put my hard-earned podcasting money on that.
Well, that's why it's only 1.5 points too. And it's not a lot of points. It's not so many points that it's going to sway me a ton in the other direction. If we're talking about a 4-pointer, I'd be like, okay, ugly game, win it by a field goal. But yeah, 1.5, that's not enough. How about the Pittsburgh Steelers that are favored on the road by 2 points at the Cincinnati Bengals, the 6-4 Steelers? This could really be a death knell for the Bengals if they lose another division game, if they lose another conference game, and they're in trouble without their quarterback. And I think the writing's already on the wall, and you get the vibe that they just might be a completely deflated locker room at this point in Cincinnati.
Yeah. I think the grave is dug. This is a lost season, and the Steelers kind of kick them in, with a division/conference loss. That's all she wrote. We know Burrow's not coming back. The big thing I've been stressing all week with this isn't, hey, Matt Canada's gone. It's that the Steelers have run the ball really well, and they've stopped the run really well. And I just think that's a terrible matchup for the Bengals without Burrow, because they don't run the ball well, and they don't stop the run at all.
I have 2 quick questions for you on this one. One is fantasy related, and talking with some family, there's my brother's like, oh, do I start Jamar Chase? Because he's about to bench Jamar Chase because of the quarterback situation. And I was like, well, not quite yet, because he's good. And it doesn't matter how bad the quarterback play is. If they're throwing from behind, he's going to get targets. And so he might still get you a whole bunch of points. What do you think about Jamar Chase from a fantasy perspective this week? Do you like him? Do you like him the rest of the year? The trade deadline's over in most fantasy leagues, so it's not a situation where you're probably trading him, even though he'd give you some big time value. It was tough. I didn't really have great advice for him. I was like, well, if you love the other guy you have at receiver, then play him. But if not, I think Jamar Chase can still eat.
I think he's a wide receiver 2 now, which is unfortunate because it's nothing he did wrong, obviously. He should be wide receiver 1 all the time. I think he's an every week starter. I think the targets will be high. If you're T. Higgins, I'm not rushing back, with free agency looming either, so I think Chase will get a lot of targets. little side note on this is you mentioned your team is a left-right corner team. So are the Steelers, except now Porter's been a shadow guy. Joey Porter Jr. shadowed Hopkins, and he shadowed Amari Cooper. I think he's going to do the same against Chase, which is even more difficult, obviously. But the numbers when he was on those 2-star receivers are tremendous. I mean, Porter might be a star, so just keep an eye on him.
Yeah, I love that development and the attitude. He asked for it, right?
He did, and I think everyone gets what I thought was better part of that story was Tomlin said yes. Players ask for stuff every day.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Like, no. In fact, no. Bob, you're not starting. Go sit down.
No, and you defensive tackle are not going to be our refrigerator Perry at the goal line. Go away.
Yeah.
People ask for stuff all the time, but he said yes.
It's like, Coach, I can play tight end. I swear I can catch.
Sit down. Unless you're JJ Watt, we're not doing that. Right.
And what's the word on offensive coordinator? Because last we talked, Matt Canada was fired, but it wasn't really clear who's going to be calling plays.
The running back coach is the offensive coordinator. The quarterback coach is the play caller. I can't offer any more insight than that, except it makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Okay. Splitting up duties. Okay. I guess
the one thing I can offer is, like, if you go look at DVOA in history, the Steelers to this point have played like the third hardest slate of defenses in the NFL. So it's going to get better whether Matt Canada is there or not. And now it's like a real easy road. Like, I kind of feel bad for Canada because it's going to go better from this point on, no matter who the coordinator is. And everyone's just going to say, it's Canada, he sings, blah, blah, blah.
You let Kenny Pickett call his own plays in the huddle, and it probably would have turned out.
It probably would still be better. You're playing Cleveland twice and San Fran and Baltimore. I mean, all the tough ones are mostly out of the way.
Yeah, Matt Canada's like, man, if I could only get to week 12, I think we'll have a nice run at the end of the year. Like, sorry,
exactly,
man. Other guys need a chance to do that.
Right.
All right. That is week 12. That's enough for us here. I hope everyone has a great holiday weekend. And Matt and I will be back post week 12 to break down everything we see and maybe even take a little peep at Monday Night Football because we haven't talked about that one as well between the Bears and the Vikings. So have a great holiday, Matt. I hope you have a great holiday as well. I think we're both going to go into the fridge and reheat some goodies. And I hope y'all eat well. Have a great weekend. Thanks for making us your first listen. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Matt and I back Monday right here. Peacock and Williamson.